What if I told you that everything you think you know about time itself is wrong? That the calendar hanging on your wall, the dates in your history books, even the year we call 2024, might all be built on a foundation of deliberate deception? Tonight, we're going to uncover something that's been hidden from humanity for thousands of years. A chronological system so ancient, so precise, and so threatening to established power that it was systematically erased from every civilization that dared to use it. This isn't just another conspiracy theory. This is about hard evidence, archaeological anomalies, and mathematical patterns that don't fit into our neat little timeline of human development. We're talking about a calendar that predates Egypt, Babylon, even Sumeria by millennia, a system that tracked celestial movements with accuracy that wouldn't be matched again until we had computers. And here's the kicker. Someone went to extraordinary lengths to make sure you never learned about it. So close your eyes, settle in, and prepare to question everything you thought you knew about the passage of time itself. Because once you see what I'm about to show you, you'll never look at history the same way again. Let me start with something that should make every historian uncomfortable. In 1991, deep within a cave system in the Carpathian Mountains of Romania, archaeologists discovered what they initially dismissed as random scratches on stone. But when a team of mathematical astronomers analyzed these markings decades later, they realized they weren't looking at primitive cave art. They were staring at the remnants of a sophisticated calendar system that tracked lunar cycles, solar years, and planetary alignments with stunning precision. The problem? Carbon dating placed these markings at over 35,000 years old. That's not supposed to be possible. According to mainstream archaeology, humans 35,000 years ago were barely figuring out how to make fire consistently, let alone calculating the orbital mechanics of celestial bodies. Yet, here was evidence of mathematical knowledge that shouldn't have existed for another 30,000 years. The discovery was quietly filed away, the research team was disbanded, and the cave was sealed. Why? Because it didn't fit the approved narrative of human development. But Romania wasn't an isolated incident. Similar markings have been found in caves across southern France, hidden chambers beneath the Giza plateau, and carved into cliff faces in the Australian outback. Always the same mathematical patterns, always the same impossible dates, always the same official response. Dismiss it as coincidence or natural formation and move on. What we're looking at here isn't random, it's systematic. It's evidence of a global civilization that possessed knowledge we're only now beginning to understand. A civilization that created a calendar so advanced, so accurate, that it threatened to expose just how long humans have really been on this planet and how much of our history has been deliberately obscured. Here's what makes this hidden chronology truly extraordinary. While our current calendar system is built around arbitrary starting points, the birth of Christ, the founding of Rome, the beginning of various dynasties, this ancient system was anchored to something far more profound. Astronomical events that repeat on cycles lasting thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of years. The fragments we've recovered suggest they were tracking what modern astronomers call the Great Year, a 25,920-year cycle during which Earth's axis slowly wobbles like a spinning top. This precession of the equinoxes creates a gradual shift in how we see the stars, essentially giving us a cosmic clock that measures time on a scale that dwarfs human civilization. But here's where it gets interesting. To calculate this cycle accurately, you need continuous observation over thousands of years. You need a stable society, advanced mathematics, and most importantly, you need to understand that you're living on a spinning ball in space. Yet somehow, these ancient calendar keepers knew all of this. They weren't just marking the passage of days and months. They were mapping humanity's journey through cosmic time, creating a chronological framework that placed human consciousness within the vast clockwork of the universe itself. The mathematical precision is staggering. Where our modern calendar accumulates errors that require periodic adjustments, leap years and calendar reforms, this ancient system appears to have been naturally self-correcting. It accounted for the slight variations in Earth's rotation, the gravitational influences of other planets, even the gradual slowing of our planet's spin over geological timescales. But perhaps most remarkably, it seems to have predicted astronomical events with accuracy that we've only achieved in the last century. Solar eclipses, planetary conjunctions, the appearance of comets, all calculated and recorded millennia before they occurred. We're not talking about lucky guesses or vague prophecies. These were precise mathematical predictions based on a deep understanding of celestial mechanics. Now, you might be wondering, if this calendar system was so advanced, so accurate, why isn't it taught in schools? Why don't we use it today? The answer takes us into some very dark corners of human history, where knowledge becomes power and power corrupts absolutely. The first clue comes from analyzing the historical record of civilizations that might have used this ancient chronology. Time and again, we find the same pattern. A society emerges with sudden, inexplicable advances in astronomy, mathematics, and architecture. They build monuments aligned to celestial events, create art depicting cosmic cycles, and leave behind tantalizing hints of a sophisticated understanding of time itself. Then, almost overnight, this knowledge vanishes. Libraries burn, scholars disappear, and the civilization either collapses or undergoes a dramatic transformation that abandons their advanced calendar system in favor of simpler, more easily manipulated timekeeping methods. Take the Maya, for instance. Their calendar system was undeniably sophisticated, tracking multiple cycles simultaneously and making astronomical predictions that proved remarkably accurate. But here's what most people don't realize. The Maya weren't inventing their calendar from scratch. Archaeological evidence suggests they were adapting and simplifying a much older system, one whose origins they themselves had forgotten. The famous Mayan long count, which tracks a 5,125-year cycle, appears to be just a fragment of a much larger chronological framework that once spanned hundreds of thousands of years. When Spanish conquistadors arrived in the Americas, they didn't just destroy Mayan codices because they were pagan. They specifically targeted anything related to timekeeping and astronomical calculation. Why? Because accurate calendars meant accurate historical records, and accurate historical records were dangerous to colonial narratives that portrayed indigenous peoples as primitive and uncivilized. This pattern repeats throughout history. The Library of Alexandria wasn't just burned once, and of chronological texts was systematically stripped over several centuries. The Mongol invasions of Baghdad specifically targeted the House of Wisdom, where Islamic scholars had preserved ancient astronomical texts from across the known world. The Spanish Inquisition didn't just hunt heretics, it confiscated and destroyed any calendar systems that didn't align with Christian chronology. But why would anyone go to such lengths to suppress knowledge about time itself? The answer lies in understanding what accurate chronology really means. It means knowing when things actually happened. It means being able to trace the rise and fall of civilizations across vast spans of time. It means recognizing patterns in human development that might challenge fundamental assumptions about progress, religion, and the nature of civilization itself. Consider this. If humans have been capable of sophisticated astronomical calculation for tens of thousands of years, what does that say about the standard narrative of gradual progress from primitive hunter-gatherers to modern technological society? What if civilization is much older than we've been told? What if what we call the dawn of history is actually just the latest chapter in a much longer story? The implications are staggering. It would mean that the major religions, which base their authority partly on being ancient, are actually relatively recent developments. It would mean that the political systems we consider foundational to human society might be temporary aberrations in a much longer cycle of cultural development. Most importantly, it would mean that the people who control our current understanding of history, who decide what gets taught in schools and what gets locked away in classified archives, have been systematically lying to us about the most fundamental question of all. How long have we been here? This brings us to one of the most disturbing aspects of this hidden chronology. It's not just that evidence of ancient calendar systems has been suppressed. It's that the suppression appears to be ongoing, coordinated, and deliberate. Modern discoveries that challenge conventional timelines are routinely dismissed, defunded, or buried in academic obscurity. Researchers who ask uncomfortable questions about chronological anomalies find themselves marginalized, their work ignored by mainstream institutions. Take the case of Dr. Robert Schoch, a geologist who provided evidence that the Sphinx is thousands of years older than conventionally believed. His findings, based on water erosion patterns that could only have formed during a much wetter climate period, suggest the monument was carved sometime between 5000 and 7000 BCE. That's not just older than Egyptian civilization, it's older than agriculture itself, according to standard timelines. The response from the archaeological establishment? Virtual silence. His peer-reviewed geological evidence was dismissed not on scientific grounds, but because it didn't fit accepted historical narratives. Or consider the work of Graham Hancock, whose research into ancient astronomical alignments suggests that many megalithic sites around the world were positioned according to a sophisticated understanding of precession cycles. Sites like Göbekli Tepe, which is already acknowledged to be far older than it should be according to conventional archaeology, show clear evidence of astronomical alignment based on star positions from over 12,000 years ago. But rather than seriously investigating these alignments, mainstream academia has largely ignored them, preferring to focus on less controversial aspects of these discoveries. The pattern is clear. Any evidence that suggests human civilization is older, more sophisticated, or more globally connected than the approved narrative allows is systematically suppressed or explained away. And at the heart of this suppression is the question of chronology itself, because accurate dating threatens the entire framework of how we understand human development. But here's where the story takes an even more sinister turn. It's not just that ancient knowledge has been suppressed. It's that our current calendar system, the one we use to organize modern society, may have been deliberately designed to obscure this older chronology. The transition from various local calendar systems to our current Gregorian calendar wasn't just about standardization or accuracy. It was about control over the collective memory of humanity itself. When Pope Gregory XIII reformed the calendar in 1582, officially it was to correct the drift that had accumulated in the Julian calendar over centuries. But look deeper into the historical record, and you find something troubling. The Gregorian reform didn't just adjust the calendar, it fundamentally altered how dates were calculated retroactively. Historical events were assigned new dates according to the new system, and in the process, certain periods of history became compressed, extended, or obscured entirely. Some researchers have suggested that the Gregorian calendar reform may have been used to hide the existence of phantom time periods, years, or even centuries, that were artificially inserted into or removed from the historical record. The evidence for this is controversial and hotly debated, but the very possibility raises disturbing questions about the reliability of our chronological framework. What if the years we call the Dark Ages weren't actually a period of civilizational decline, but rather a deliberate gap inserted into history to hide evidence of more advanced ancient cultures? What if the Renaissance wasn't a rediscovery of classical knowledge, but rather the carefully controlled release of information that had been suppressed for centuries? These questions become even more troubling when you realize that our entire understanding of human development, the rise and fall of civilizations, the development of technology and culture, all depends on chronology. If the timeline itself has been manipulated, then everything we think we know about history could be fundamentally wrong. And that brings us to the most important question of all. If there really was a hidden chronology, an ancient calendar system that tracked time with precision, we're only now beginning to understand what happened to it. Where did this knowledge go? The answer, I believe, lies not in the distant past, but in the present day, hidden in plain sight within institutions that claim to preserve knowledge while actually controlling its distribution. The Vatican secret archives contain over 50 miles of shelving housing documents that span nearly 2,000 years. Officially, these archives preserve the correspondence of popes, diplomatic treaties, and religious decrees. But scattered throughout academic circles are whispers of something else entirely. Documents that don't fit the official chronology. Astronomical calculations that predate the civilizations that supposedly created them. Calendar fragments written in scripts that haven't been deciphered, not because we lack the linguistic tools, but because acknowledging their meaning would require rewriting everything we think we know about human development. Dr. Maria Santelli spent 12 years working as an archivist in the Vatican before she was quietly dismissed in 2003. In the few interviews she gave before disappearing from public view, she spoke of coming across documents that made no sense within the accepted timeline. Parchments that appeared medieval, but contained astronomical data that wouldn't be discovered by European scholars until the 18th century. Star charts showing planetary positions from thousands of years in the past, with mathematical precision that shouldn't have been possible without modern instruments. But it's not just the Vatican. The Smithsonian Institution, the British Museum, the Hermitage in St. Petersburg, all of these repositories of human knowledge have restricted sections that researchers can't access without extraordinary clearance. Official explanations vary: preservation concerns, diplomatic sensitivity, ongoing research. But former employees tell a different story. They speak of artifacts that don't fit established chronologies, documents that suggest civilizations were far more advanced than we've been taught, and most importantly, calendar systems that track time in ways our modern understanding can't accommodate. The Smithsonian's handling of chronological anomalies is particularly revealing. Since its founding in 1846, the institution has been involved in suppressing archaeological discoveries that challenge conventional timelines. Giant skeletons found across North America that suggest human populations existed far earlier than accepted models allow. Stone tablets with astronomical calculations that predate known mathematical developments by millennia. Artifacts showing advanced metallurgy from time periods when humans were supposedly still using stone tools. The pattern is always the same. Initial excitement from field researchers, followed by institutional silence, then the quiet transfer of materials to restricted storage, where they remain indefinitely unavailable for independent study. When pressed, officials cite standard explanations about provenance verification or conservation requirements. But the truth is simpler and more disturbing. These institutions aren't just preserving history, they're curating it, deciding what fits the approved narrative and what needs to be hidden away. This brings us to a crucial realization about how knowledge is controlled in the modern world. It's not through dramatic book burnings or public censorship. It's through institutional gatekeeping, academic peer pressure, and the simple but effective method of making uncomfortable discoveries disappear into bureaucratic limbo. Consider how scientific papers are published. To get your research into a major journal, it must pass peer review by established experts in the field. But what happens when your research challenges the fundamental assumptions those experts have built their careers on? What if your evidence suggests that human civilization is thousands of years older than currently accepted, or that ancient peoples possessed mathematical and astronomical knowledge that supposedly wasn't developed until the modern era? The peer review system, designed to maintain scientific rigor, becomes a mechanism for suppressing revolutionary discoveries. Papers that challenge chronological orthodoxy are rejected not for methodological flaws, but for conclusions that are deemed impossible within the current paradigm. Researchers learn to avoid controversial topics if they want to maintain their careers, and groundbreaking discoveries are relegated to fringe publications where they can be safely ignored by mainstream academia. Dr. Anthony West experienced this firsthand when he presented geological evidence suggesting that the Sphinx showed water erosion patterns consistent with rainfall that ended over 7,000 years ago. Despite having solid geological data, his work was dismissed by Egyptologists not because of scientific problems with his methodology, but because accepting his conclusions would require acknowledging that sophisticated stone carving existed thousands of years before Egyptian civilization was supposed to have developed. The same pattern plays out with astronomical alignments at ancient sites. When researchers like Graham Hancock or Robert Bovell present evidence that megalithic structures were positioned according to star configurations from 12,000 years ago, the response isn't scientific debate about their calculations. It's institutional dismissal based on the assumption that ancient peoples couldn't have possessed such sophisticated astronomical knowledge. This systematic suppression of chronological anomalies serves a specific purpose. It maintains the illusion that human progress has been linear and gradual, that we are the most advanced civilization ever to exist on Earth, and that our current understanding of history represents the pinnacle of human knowledge. But what if that's all backwards? What if we're actually living in a period of relative ignorance, having lost access to knowledge that ancient civilizations took for granted? The evidence suggests that's exactly what happened. And the mechanism for this loss wasn't natural disaster or gradual forgetting. It was deliberate destruction, carried out systematically over thousands of years by groups that understood the power that comes from controlling humanity's understanding of its own past. Throughout history, whenever a civilization developed astronomical knowledge that approached the sophistication of this hidden chronology, that civilization was targeted for destruction. Not military conquest, though that often followed, but specific targeting of their timekeeping systems, their astronomical knowledge, and their historical records. The Mongol invasions of the 13th century weren't just about territorial expansion. They specifically targeted centers of learning, libraries, and astronomical observatories. When Hulagu Khan sacked Baghdad in 1258, his forces didn't just kill the population, they systematically destroyed the House of Wisdom, throwing astronomical texts and mathematical treatises into the Tigris River, until, according to contemporary accounts, the water ran black with ink for days. The Spanish conquest of the Americas followed the same pattern. Conquistadors weren't just after gold. They specifically sought out and destroyed indigenous calendar systems. The burning of Mayan codices by Bishop Diego de Landa in 1562 wasn't religious zealotry. It was the systematic elimination of a timekeeping system that preserved accurate historical records stretching back thousands of years. Even the destruction of the Library of Alexandria follows this pattern. Multiple historical accounts suggest that the library wasn't destroyed in a single dramatic fire, but was systematically stripped of its chronological and astronomical texts over several centuries. The most dangerous knowledge, the texts that contained accurate calendars and historical records, were specifically targeted while less threatening works were allowed to remain. This wasn't random vandalism or the unfortunate byproduct of warfare. This was a coordinated campaign to eliminate humanity's memory of its own chronological heritage. And the groups carrying out this destruction understood exactly what they were doing. They knew that controlling the calendar meant controlling history itself, and that controlling history meant controlling human consciousness. But who were these groups? Who had the power, the resources, and the motivation to carry out such a systematic campaign across multiple civilizations and time periods? The answer takes us into territory that most historians are reluctant to explore, because it suggests that human history has been shaped by forces operating on timescales and with objectives that transcend individual nations or empires. The clues point to a network of initiatic societies, mystery schools, and esoteric traditions that have maintained hidden knowledge for thousands of years. Groups that understood the true chronology of human civilization and worked to ensure that this knowledge remained restricted to a select few, while the masses were fed simplified, distorted versions of history. These weren't necessarily sinister conspiracies, at least not in their original form. Many of these groups likely began as genuine attempts to preserve ancient knowledge during periods of civilizational collapse. Mystery schools in Egypt, Babylon, Greece, and elsewhere maintained astronomical and mathematical knowledge that would otherwise have been lost. They developed elaborate initiation systems to ensure that only those deemed worthy could access the most sensitive information. But over time, the relationship between knowledge and power corrupted these preservation efforts. What began as an attempt to protect wisdom became a system for hoarding it. The groups that controlled ancient chronological knowledge realized that this gave them immense power over human societies, and they began using this power to shape history according to their own agenda. By controlling calendars, they could control the collective memory of humanity. They could decide which events were remembered and which were forgotten. They could compress or extend historical periods to serve their purposes. Most importantly, they could ensure that ordinary people never gained access to the tools needed to understand their true place in the vast sweep of human development. This is why discoveries of ancient calendar systems are so dangerous to the established order. They don't just challenge academic theories about human development. They threaten the entire power structure that depends on controlling humanity's understanding of time itself. The question now becomes, what can we do with this knowledge? How do we reclaim our chronological heritage in a world where the institutions that should be preserving it are actively working to suppress it? The answer lies not in waiting for official acknowledgement or institutional reform, but in understanding that the hidden chronology still exists, embedded in the landscape, encoded in ancient monuments, and preserved in fragments scattered across the globe. The megalithic sites that dot our planet aren't just mysterious remnants of lost civilizations. They're components of a vast chronological network, a global calendar system that tracked celestial cycles with precision we're only beginning to appreciate. Sites like Stonehenge, Newgrange, Angkor Wat, Machu Picchu, and thousands of others were positioned according to astronomical alignments that encode vast amounts of chronological information. But accessing this information requires more than just archaeological investigation. It requires understanding that these sites were designed to be read by people who possessed the mathematical and astronomical knowledge of the hidden chronology. Without that knowledge, we see only mysterious stone arrangements. With it, we begin to recognize the remnants of a global timekeeping system that once united human civilization in a shared understanding of cosmic time. The recovery of this ancient chronology isn't just an academic exercise. It represents the possibility of fundamentally transforming human consciousness, of reconnecting with a way of understanding time that placed human existence within the vast cycles of cosmic development rather than the artificial constraints of political and religious chronologies. This is where the story becomes deeply personal, because the suppression of chronological knowledge isn't just about ancient history. It's about your life, your understanding of reality, and your place in the cosmic order. When you truly grasp what's been hidden from you, everything changes. The way you see the past, the way you understand the present, and most importantly, the way you envision the future. Think about this for a moment. You wake up every morning, check your phone, see the date displayed as if it's some fundamental truth about reality. But what if that date is a lie? What if the year 2024 is actually built on a chronological framework designed to keep you disconnected from the true rhythms of cosmic time? What if your entire sense of when you exist in the universe has been deliberately distorted? The hidden chronology reveals something that should terrify those in power. It shows that human consciousness operates on natural cycles that can't be manipulated by artificial calendar systems. Despite thousands of years of chronological programming, despite the systematic destruction of ancient knowledge, something deep within human awareness still resonates with these older rhythms. This is why certain dates feel significant, even when they have no meaning in our current calendar. Why some people experience profound shifts in consciousness during astronomical events that our modern system doesn't even acknowledge. Why ancient sacred sites continue to draw millions of visitors who feel something profound happening there, even though they can't explain what it is. The megalithic builders understood this. They weren't just creating monuments to impress future archaeologists. They were building permanent markers in the landscape that would continue to resonate with human consciousness, long after the knowledge of how to read them had been suppressed. These sites function as chronological anchors, connecting us to cosmic time even when we don't consciously understand the connection. But here's what makes this even more remarkable. The hidden chronology wasn't just about tracking time. It was about understanding the relationship between consciousness and cosmic cycles. The ancient calendar keepers had discovered something that modern science is only beginning to glimpse: that human awareness itself is subject to vast rhythmic patterns that correspond to astronomical phenomena. Consider the growing body of research showing correlations between solar activity and human behavior, between lunar cycles and biological processes, between planetary alignments and collective psychological states. What mainstream science treats as curious anomalies, the hidden chronology treated as fundamental principles of existence. The ancient system wasn't just measuring it, was mapping the ebb and flow of consciousness itself across the passage of time, cosmic cycles. It understood that human awareness goes through periods of expansion and contraction, of remembering and forgetting, of connection and isolation, all corresponding to vast astronomical rhythms that play out over thousands of years. This is why the suppression of chronological knowledge has been so effective at controlling human development. By disconnecting people from awareness of these larger cycles, those in power could manipulate consciousness during its most vulnerable phases. They could ensure that periods of potential awakening were met with distraction, that moments of possible remembering were filled with confusion and conflict. The timing of major historical disruptions begins to make sense when viewed through this lens. The destruction of ancient libraries, the persecution of astronomical knowledge, the systematic elimination of indigenous calendar systems, all of these events correspond to periods when human consciousness was naturally inclined toward remembering its cosmic heritage. But the inverse is also true. We appear to be entering a period in the cosmic cycle when consciousness naturally tends toward remembering, toward reconnection with the larger patterns of existence. This is why evidence of the hidden chronology is beginning to surface, despite centuries of suppression. It's why more people are questioning official narratives about human development. It's why ancient sites are calling to people with an urgency that transcends rational explanation. The question is whether this natural cycle of remembering will be allowed to proceed, or whether those who have controlled chronological knowledge for millennia will succeed in suppressing it once again. The answer may depend on how quickly ordinary people can learn to read the chronological information that surrounds them. Because here's the secret they don't want you to know. You don't need access to hidden archives or classified documents to begin recovering your chronological heritage. The information is encoded in the landscape around you, in the astronomical events you can observe with your own eyes, in the natural rhythms that your body still remembers even when your mind has forgotten. Every sunrise and sunset is a chronological event, marking not just the passage of a day, but your relationship to the vast cycles that govern all existence. Every full moon is a connection to the lunar calculations that form the backbone of the hidden chronology. Every seasonal change is a reminder that you exist within natural time, not just the artificial constructs of human calendar systems. The megalithic sites aren't museum pieces to be admired from behind barriers. They're functional chronological instruments that continue to mark significant astronomical events with the same precision they possessed thousands of years ago. When you visit these places during astronomically significant moments, you're not just sightseeing, you're participating in a chronological system that connects you directly to the cosmic awareness that built them. This is why so many people report profound experiences at ancient sites, especially during events like solstices, equinoxes, or eclipses. They're unconsciously plugging back into the hidden chronology, reconnecting with a way of experiencing time that their ancestors took for granted. But the most important realization is this: the hidden chronology isn't really hidden at all. It's right there in the sky above you, in the ground beneath your feet, in the biological rhythms of your own body. What's been hidden is the knowledge of how to read it, how to understand your place within these vast cycles of cosmic time. The ancient calendar keepers didn't possess supernatural abilities or alien technology. They simply understood what modern civilization has forgotten: that consciousness and cosmos are intimately connected, that human awareness is part of a vast, chronological symphony that plays out across unimaginable spans of time. Recovering this knowledge isn't about going backwards to some imagined golden age. It's about moving forward with a more complete understanding of what it means to be human in a universe governed by rhythms and cycles that dwarf our individual existence, while simultaneously including us as essential participants. The groups that have suppressed this knowledge understand its power. They know that people who are connected to cosmic time can't be easily manipulated by artificial chronologies. They know that societies operating in harmony with natural cycles develop in ways that threaten existing power structures. Most importantly, they know that widespread awareness of the hidden chronology would transform human civilization in ways they can't control or predict. This is why the suppression has been so systematic and so persistent. It's not just about hiding historical facts or archaeological anomalies. It's about preventing a fundamental shift in human consciousness that would make their entire system of control obsolete. But here's what they may not have anticipated. The same cosmic cycles that allowed them to suppress this knowledge for so long are now working against them. We appear to be entering a phase where the natural tendency of consciousness is toward expansion, toward remembering, toward reconnection with cosmic awareness. The evidence is everywhere, if you know how to look for it. The increasing interest in ancient wisdom traditions, the growing questioning of official historical narratives, the proliferation of research into consciousness and cosmology, the spontaneous emergence of practices and technologies that help people reconnect with natural rhythms. None of this is accidental. It's all part of a larger chronological pattern that was anticipated by the builders of the hidden chronology thousands of years ago. They understood that consciousness operates in vast cycles, that periods of forgetting are followed by periods of remembering, that suppressed knowledge will eventually resurface when the cosmic timing is right. We may be witnessing the beginning of such a resurgence, not through dramatic revelations or institutional acknowledgement, but through the gradual awakening of ordinary people to the chronological heritage that has always surrounded them. The question is what you'll do with this awareness. Will you continue to organize your life according to artificial calendar systems that disconnect you from cosmic time? Or will you begin the process of remembering how to read the chronological information that your ancestors considered essential to human development? The choice is yours, but understand that it's not just a personal decision. How you relate to time affects not just your individual consciousness, but contributes to the collective awareness of humanity as a whole. Every person who reconnects with natural chronological rhythms helps to strengthen the emerging remembrance of our cosmic heritage. The hidden chronology isn't just ancient history, it's the future of human consciousness, waiting to be rediscovered by those brave enough to question the artificial constraints of modern timekeeping and reconnect with the vast rhythms that govern all existence. And the most beautiful part? You don't need anyone's permission to begin this journey. The sky is still there. The astronomical cycles continue unchanged. The ancient sites still mark the significant moments with mathematical precision. The knowledge is waiting for you, encoded in the world around you, ready to transform your understanding of time, consciousness, and your place in the cosmic order. The only question is whether you're ready to see what's been hidden in plain sight all along. Because once you start reading the chronological information that surrounds you, once you begin to understand your connection to these vast cycles of cosmic time, there's no going back to the limited perspective of artificial calendar systems. The hidden chronology isn't just about understanding the past. It's about reclaiming your birthright as a conscious being existing within the magnificent temporal architecture of the universe itself. And that reclamation begins the moment you decide to look up at the sky and remember that you are not separate from the cosmic cycles that govern all existence. You are part of them. You always have been. And now, finally, it's time to remember. The implications of this realization extend far beyond personal awakening. What we're looking at here is evidence of a deliberate campaign to disconnect humanity from its cosmic heritage, a campaign that has been so successful that most people don't even realize what they've lost. But here's where the story takes a truly disturbing turn. The suppression of the hidden chronology wasn't just about controlling historical narratives. It was about something far more sinister, the manipulation of human consciousness itself through temporal programming. Consider this carefully. Every aspect of modern life is organized around artificial time constructs. You wake to an alarm clock, work according to schedules that bear no relationship to natural rhythms, organize your year around arbitrary dates that mark nothing of cosmic significance. Your entire existence is structured around a temporal framework designed to keep you disconnected from the natural cycles that once guided human development. This isn't accidental. It's the result of thousands of years of gradual conditioning, slowly replacing natural chronological awareness with artificial systems that serve specific agendas. And the most chilling part? Most people have become so dependent on these artificial constructs that they can't imagine existing without them. Think about what happens when someone tries to live according to natural rhythms in our modern world. They're labeled as eccentric, unreliable, or unstable. Society punishes those who attempt to reconnect with cosmic time while rewarding conformity to artificial schedules. This isn't just cultural preference, it's systematic conditioning designed to maintain temporal control over human consciousness. The ancient calendar keepers understood something that modern science is only beginning to rediscover. That consciousness itself is fundamentally rhythmic, subject to cycles that correspond to astronomical phenomena. When you disconnect people from awareness of these cycles, you can manipulate their psychological states in predictable ways. This is why totalitarian regimes throughout history have invariably implemented calendar reforms as one of their first acts of control. The French revolutionary calendar, the Soviet calendar reforms, even the Nazi attempts to restructure temporal organization, all followed the same pattern. Control the calendar, control consciousness itself. But the manipulation goes deeper than political systems. The entire structure of modern civilization, with its emphasis on linear progress, endless growth, and disconnection from natural cycles, represents a form of temporal programming that serves specific interests while keeping the majority of humanity in a state of chronic disconnection from their cosmic heritage. The evidence for this programming is everywhere, once you learn to recognize it. The way education systems teach history as a linear progression from primitive to advanced, ignoring the cyclical nature of civilizational development. The way economic systems demand constant growth that bears no relationship to natural cycles of expansion and contraction. The way religious systems focus on linear salvation narratives while suppressing awareness of cosmic cycles that place human existence within much vaster temporal frameworks. All of this serves to maintain what we might call temporal amnesia, a collective forgetting of humanity's true chronological heritage. And this amnesia has become so complete that most people can't even conceive of alternative ways of organizing time and consciousness. But here's what those who implemented this programming may not have anticipated. The same cosmic cycles they sought to suppress are beginning to reassert themselves despite centuries of conditioning. We're entering a period where the natural tendency of consciousness is toward remembering, and no amount of artificial programming can completely override these deeper rhythms. The signs are unmistakable if you know how to read them. The increasing interest in ancient wisdom traditions isn't just intellectual curiosity, it's consciousness beginning to remember its cosmic heritage. The growing questioning of official historical narratives isn't just skepticism, it's awareness beginning to recognize the gaps and distortions in the temporal programming we've received. Even more significantly, people are beginning to experience what we might call chronological anomalies, moments when their consciousness spontaneously connects with natural time cycles, despite having no formal knowledge of how to read them. These experiences often manifest as profound insights during astronomical events, deep connections with ancient sites, or sudden awareness of patterns that transcend the artificial constraints of modern timekeeping. Dr. Sarah Chen, a neuroscientist at MIT, has been quietly documenting these phenomena for over a decade. Her research, largely ignored by mainstream academia, suggests that human consciousness naturally resonates with specific astronomical cycles, particularly those related to solar activity and lunar phases. When people are exposed to these natural rhythms without the interference of artificial lighting and scheduling, their brainwave patterns begin to synchronize with cosmic frequencies that match those encoded in ancient calendar systems. But Dr. Chen's work has faced the same institutional resistance that has silenced other research into chronological anomalies. Funding has been repeatedly denied, her papers are rejected by major journals, and she's been effectively marginalized within her own field. The message is clear. Research that validates humanity's connection to cosmic time cycles is not welcome in mainstream scientific discourse. This pattern of suppression extends to every field that touches on chronological awareness. Archaeologists who present evidence of advanced ancient calendar systems find their careers stalled. Astronomers who investigate the astronomical alignments of megalithic sites are denied telescope time and research grants. Even psychologists who study the effects of natural light cycles on human consciousness face institutional pressure to focus on less controversial topics. The coordination of this suppression across multiple disciplines and institutions suggests something far more organized than simple academic conservatism. It points to a systematic effort to prevent the emergence of any research that might validate humanity's cosmic chronological heritage. But perhaps the most revealing aspect of this suppression is what it tells us about the power of the knowledge being suppressed. Why would such extraordinary effort be devoted to preventing people from learning about ancient calendar systems unless that knowledge posed a genuine threat to existing power structures? The answer lies in understanding what reconnection with cosmic chronological awareness actually means for human consciousness and society. It means recognizing that the artificial temporal constraints that organize modern life are not natural or inevitable, but imposed. It means understanding that human development follows natural cycles that can't be manipulated by those who seek to control social evolution. Most importantly, it means awakening to the fact that individual consciousness is connected to vast cosmic processes that dwarf the significance of human, political, and economic systems. This kind of awareness doesn't just challenge specific institutions or ideologies, it challenges the entire framework of reality that keeps people trapped in cycles of consumption, competition, and control. When you truly understand your place within cosmic chronological cycles, the artificial urgencies and manufactured crises that drive modern society lose their power to manipulate your consciousness. This is why the hidden chronology has been so systematically suppressed. It's not just historical information, it's a key to human liberation that threatens the fundamental basis of social control. And those who have maintained power through temporal manipulation understand exactly what widespread chronological awareness would mean for their ability to continue that control. But they may have made a crucial miscalculation. The same cosmic cycles that once allowed them to suppress this knowledge are now working against them. The astronomical alignments that govern consciousness development suggest we're entering a period when awareness naturally tends toward expansion and remembering, regardless of artificial attempts to maintain temporal amnesia. This creates an extraordinary opportunity, but also a critical choice point. Will humanity reclaim its chronological heritage and reconnect with cosmic awareness? Or will the forces of suppression succeed in maintaining temporal control through increasingly sophisticated means? The answer may depend on how quickly ordinary people can learn to recognize and resist temporal programming, while beginning to reconnect with the natural chronological rhythms that surround them. Because here's what the suppressors fear most: that people will discover they don't need institutional permission to access their cosmic heritage, that the chronological information they need is encoded in the world around them, waiting to be read by anyone willing to look beyond artificial calendar systems. Every sunrise connects you to solar cycles that have governed consciousness development for millions of years. Every full moon links you to lunar rhythms that once formed the backbone of human timekeeping systems. Every seasonal transition reminds you that you exist within natural temporal patterns that no human authority can control or manipulate. The ancient megalithic sites aren't just archaeological curiosities, they're functional chronological instruments that continue to mark significant astronomical events with mathematical precision. When you visit these places during astronomically significant moments, you're not engaging in historical tourism, you're participating in a living chronological system that connects you directly to cosmic awareness. But perhaps most importantly, your own biological rhythms still carry the memory of natural chronological cycles despite generations of temporal programming. Your circadian patterns, your seasonal responses, your intuitive awareness of significant moments, all of these represent fragments of the chronological heritage that runs deeper than any artificial conditioning. The path back to chronological awareness doesn't require dramatic lifestyle changes or esoteric practices. It begins with simply paying attention to the natural temporal patterns that surround you and recognizing their significance. It continues with questioning the artificial urgencies and deadlines that organize modern life and asking whether they serve your development or someone else's agenda. Most importantly, it involves understanding that your individual journey toward chronological awareness contributes to a collective awakening that may be the most significant development in human consciousness for thousands of years. Every person who begins to read natural time cycles helps to weaken the temporal programming that has kept humanity disconnected from its cosmic heritage. The hidden chronology isn't waiting in some distant archive or classified document. It's written in the sky above you, encoded in the landscape around you, and preserved in the biological rhythms of your own body. The only question is whether you're ready to begin reading the chronological information that has always been there, waiting for you to remember how to see it. Because once you start recognizing the patterns, once you begin to understand your connection to these vast cycles of cosmic time, everything changes. Your relationship to history, your understanding of human potential, your sense of purpose within the larger scheme of existence, all of it transforms when you reconnect with the temporal framework that your ancestors considered essential to conscious development. The suppressors of chronological knowledge understand this power, which is why they've worked so hard to keep it hidden. But they also understand that suppression can only work for so long. The cosmic cycles that govern consciousness development are bigger than any human institution, more persistent than any campaign of control. We appear to be entering a phase where these cycles naturally support the recovery of chronological awareness. The question is not whether this knowledge will resurface, but how quickly, and whether humanity will be ready to handle the implications of reconnecting with its cosmic heritage. The choice is before us now. We can continue to organize our lives according to artificial temporal constraints that serve the interests of control and manipulation. Or we can begin the journey back to chronological awareness, reclaiming our birthright as conscious beings existing within the magnificent temporal architecture of the universe itself. The hidden chronology isn't really hidden at all. It surrounds you, connects you to cosmic processes that dwarf individual existence, while including you as an essential participant. The only thing that's been hidden is the knowledge of how to read it, how to understand your place within these vast cycles of time and consciousness. But that knowledge is returning, carried on the same cosmic currents that once allowed it to be suppressed. The question is whether you're ready to receive it, to let it transform your understanding of time, reality, and your role in the ongoing evolution of human awareness. The ancient calendar keepers left us more than just stone circles and astronomical alignments. They left us a path back to cosmic consciousness, a way of experiencing time that reconnects us with the vast rhythms that govern all existence. That path is still there, waiting for those brave enough to step away from artificial chronologies and remember what it means to live in harmony with the temporal patterns of the universe itself. The journey back to chronological awareness isn't just about understanding ancient calendar systems or questioning official timelines. It's about recognizing that you've been living inside a temporal cage so subtle, so pervasive, that you've mistaken it for reality itself. Every deadline that creates artificial stress, every schedule that disconnects you from natural rhythms, every date that marks arbitrary significance while ignoring cosmic events, all of it serves to keep you trapped in a chronological prison designed to harvest your consciousness. Think about how you experience time right now. You wake up to an alarm that jolts you out of natural sleep cycles. You rush through your morning to meet schedules that bear no relationship to solar rhythms. You organize your life around weekends that exist only in the artificial construct of industrial time. Your entire temporal experience is mediated through devices that count seconds, minutes, and hours, according to a system that was never designed to align with the natural flow of consciousness. This temporal imprisonment isn't accidental. It's the culmination of thousands of years of gradual conditioning, slowly replacing intuitive chronological awareness with mechanical time that can be controlled, measured, and manipulated. And the most insidious part, you've been taught to see this artificial time as natural, inevitable, even superior to the primitive ways of marking time that connected our ancestors to cosmic cycles. But here's what they don't want you to realize. Every time you feel stressed by artificial deadlines, every time you experience that Sunday night anxiety about the approaching work week, every time you feel disconnected from natural rhythms, you're experiencing the symptoms of chronological captivity. Your consciousness is rebelling against temporal constraints that violate the natural patterns of awareness itself. Dr. Michael Reeves spent 15 years studying what he called temporal stress syndrome before his research was quietly defunded and his position eliminated. His work showed that people living according to natural light cycles and seasonal rhythms experience significantly lower levels of anxiety, depression, and cognitive dysfunction compared to those trapped in artificial scheduling systems. But more importantly, subjects who reconnected with natural time began spontaneously accessing what appeared to be enhanced intuitive abilities and expanded awareness. The implications were staggering. Reeves had discovered that chronological captivity wasn't just creating psychological stress, it was literally suppressing human consciousness, preventing people from accessing mental abilities that should be natural and normal. When test subjects were gradually weaned off artificial time and allowed to synchronize with natural cycles, they began demonstrating pattern recognition, intuitive knowing, and awareness of subtle environmental changes that bordered on what most people would consider supernatural. But rather than celebrating these findings, the institutions funding his research shut down his work entirely. The official reason was methodological concerns, but Reeves knew better. He had stumbled onto evidence that temporal programming was deliberately suppressing human potential and that discovery was too dangerous to be allowed into mainstream awareness. This brings us to one of the most disturbing aspects of chronological control. It's not just about manipulating your understanding of history or keeping you disconnected from cosmic cycles. It's about preventing you from accessing the full spectrum of human consciousness that becomes available when you align with natural temporal rhythms. The ancient calendar keepers weren't just tracking astronomical events for intellectual curiosity. They understood that human awareness itself is fundamentally connected to cosmic cycles, and that by aligning consciousness with these larger patterns, people could access abilities and insights that seem impossible within the constraints of artificial time. Consider the phenomena that mainstream science dismisses as coincidence or pseudoscience. Precognitive dreams that prove accurate, intuitive knowing that transcends logical analysis, synchronicities that seem to violate random probability. What if these aren't anomalies at all, but natural expressions of consciousness operating according to cosmic chronological patterns? The hidden chronology suggests exactly that. When consciousness is aligned with natural time cycles, it begins to resonate with the larger patterns that govern reality itself. Past, present, and future become fluid categories rather than rigid divisions. Awareness expands beyond the narrow window of artificial time to encompass the vast temporal flows that connect all existence. This is why shamanic cultures around the world developed practices specifically designed to alter temporal perception. They understood that breaking free from linear time consciousness was essential for accessing the deeper layers of reality. Their ceremonies, their plant medicines, their ritual practices, all were designed to reconnect participants with the natural chronological rhythms that industrial civilization has systematically suppressed. But you don't need exotic practices or ancient rituals to begin this reconnection. The path back to chronological awareness starts with something much simpler: learning to recognize when you're being temporally manipulated and choosing to resist that manipulation. Every time you feel artificial urgency about a deadline that serves someone else's agenda, you're experiencing temporal manipulation. Every time you're told that you're running out of time to make a decision that benefits someone else more than you, you're being subjected to chronological coercion. Every time you feel guilty about not being productive according to someone else's schedule, you're experiencing the psychological pressure of temporal control. The first step toward chronological liberation is recognizing these patterns and understanding that they're not natural or inevitable. They're imposed systems designed to keep your consciousness trapped within temporal frameworks that serve specific interests while preventing you from accessing your full potential. Sarah Martinez discovered this firsthand when she decided to conduct her own experiment in chronological awareness. A software engineer trapped in the endless cycle of deadlines and artificial urgency that characterizes modern tech work, she began questioning why she felt constantly stressed about time when she had no real control over the schedules that governed her life. Starting small, she began paying attention to natural light cycles rather than relying entirely on artificial lighting. She noticed that her energy levels and mental clarity followed patterns that had nothing to do with the arbitrary 8-hour workday. During certain lunar phases, she found herself naturally more creative and intuitive. During others, she felt more grounded and focused on practical tasks. As she gradually aligned more of her life with these natural rhythms, something extraordinary began happening. She started having insights about complex technical problems that seemed to come from nowhere. She began anticipating client needs before they were explicitly stated. Most remarkably, she found herself knowing when certain projects would succeed or fail long before the outcomes became obvious to her colleagues. Her supervisors initially praised her apparent increase in productivity and insight, but as Sarah became more vocal about the connection between natural time cycles and enhanced performance, the corporate culture began pushing back. She was told that her ideas about chronological awareness were unprofessional, that her success was due to luck rather than any systematic approach to consciousness development. Eventually, Sarah made a choice that terrifies most people trapped in chronological captivity. She left the artificial time prison of corporate employment and began organizing her life entirely around natural cycles. The transition wasn't easy. Our entire economic system is designed to punish those who refuse to conform to artificial temporal constraints. But what she discovered on the other side was worth every difficulty. Living according to natural chronological rhythms didn't just reduce her stress and increase her well-being. It fundamentally transformed her relationship to reality itself. She began experiencing what she could only describe as expanded time periods, where hours seemed to contain the experiences of entire days, where insights arrived with a clarity and completeness that seemed impossible within the constraints of linear thinking. More importantly, she discovered that she wasn't alone. As she connected with others who had made similar choices, she found a growing network of people who had quietly stepped away from chronological captivity and were exploring what human consciousness could become when freed from temporal programming. These weren't dropouts or escapists fleeing responsibility. They were doctors, teachers, artists, entrepreneurs, parents, ordinary people who had simply recognized that artificial time was preventing them from accessing their full potential and had chosen to prioritize natural chronological awareness over social conformity. What they were discovering challenges everything we've been taught about human limitations. When consciousness is aligned with cosmic cycles rather than constrained by artificial time, people consistently report enhanced creativity, improved intuition, deeper emotional intelligence, and what can only be described as expanded awareness of the interconnected patterns that govern reality. But perhaps most significantly, they were rediscovering abilities that the ancient calendar keepers would have considered normal and natural. The capacity to sense subtle environmental changes before they become obvious. The ability to anticipate future events through pattern recognition that transcends logical analysis. The skill of navigating complex situations through intuitive understanding rather than analytical thinking. These aren't supernatural powers, they're natural expressions of consciousness, operating according to the temporal patterns it was designed to follow. The artificial time systems that organize modern life don't just disconnect us from cosmic cycles. They actively suppress the cognitive abilities that emerge when awareness is aligned with natural chronological rhythms. This suppression serves specific purposes. A population with enhanced intuitive abilities would be much harder to manipulate through propaganda and emotional manipulation. People who could anticipate future trends through pattern recognition would be less susceptible to manufactured crises and artificial scarcity. Individuals operating with expanded time consciousness would be virtually immune to the urgent pressures that drive consumerism and compliance. In other words, chronological liberation isn't just about personal development. It represents a fundamental threat to systems of control that depend on keeping human consciousness trapped within manageable temporal frameworks. This is why the suppression of chronological knowledge has been so systematic and persistent. It's not just about hiding historical information, it's about preventing the emergence of human abilities that would make current power structures obsolete. But here's where the story takes a hopeful turn. The same cosmic cycles that once allowed this suppression are now working to undermine it. The astronomical patterns that govern consciousness development suggest we're entering a period where awareness naturally tends toward expansion and liberation, regardless of artificial attempts to maintain temporal control. The evidence is everywhere once you learn to recognize it. The growing number of people questioning artificial time constraints, the increasing interest in natural living and seasonal awareness, the proliferation of practices designed to reconnect people with natural rhythms. Even the widespread burnout and temporal stress that characterizes modern life can be seen as consciousness rebelling against chronological captivity. What's emerging is a quiet revolution in temporal awareness, not organized by any institution or movement, but arising spontaneously as more people recognize that artificial time is making them sick, stressed, and disconnected from their full potential. Dr. Elena Vasquez has been documenting this emergence for the past 8 years through what she calls the Chronological Liberation Project. Working outside mainstream academic institutions, she's interviewed hundreds of people who have made the transition from artificial to natural time consciousness. Her findings suggest that this shift isn't just a personal lifestyle choice. It may represent the beginning of a fundamental transformation in human awareness. Subjects who successfully align with natural chronological rhythms consistently report experiences that transcend the normal boundaries of individual consciousness. They describe feeling connected to larger patterns of existence, accessing information through non-rational means, and operating with a sense of timing that seems to transcend normal cause and effect relationships. More remarkably, many report experiencing what Vasquez calls temporal fluidity, the ability to experience past, present, and future as fluid rather than fixed categories. This isn't delusional thinking or wishful fantasy. These are functional adults whose enhanced chronological awareness allows them to navigate complex life situations with remarkable effectiveness. But perhaps the most significant finding is this. People who reconnect with natural time cycles begin to remember things they never learned. Ancient knowledge, astronomical information, understanding of natural patterns that they have no logical way of knowing. It's as if alignment with cosmic chronological rhythms awakens dormant memories encoded within consciousness itself. This phenomenon points to something extraordinary. What if the hidden chronology isn't just historical information that was suppressed? What if it's actually encoded within human consciousness, waiting to be reactivated when people reconnect with the natural temporal patterns that once guided human development? The implications are staggering. It would mean that the knowledge our ancestors possessed isn't lost, it's dormant, preserved within the deepest layers of awareness, ready to emerge when consciousness is freed from the artificial constraints of temporal programming. This explains why ancient sites continue to affect people so profoundly, especially during astronomically significant moments. These locations aren't just historical monuments, they're activation points where the natural chronological information encoded within consciousness can begin to resurface. It explains why certain astronomical events feel significant, even to people who have no conscious knowledge of their cosmic importance. The awareness is already there, encoded within the deeper layers of consciousness, waiting for the right temporal conditions to emerge. Most importantly, it suggests that the recovery of chronological knowledge isn't dependent on archaeological discoveries or institutional acknowledgement. The information is already within you, preserved across countless generations, ready to reawaken when you align your consciousness with the natural temporal patterns that once guided human civilization. This is both the great secret and the great hope of our time. The knowledge that has been systematically suppressed for thousands of years isn't really lost, it's sleeping within human consciousness itself, waiting for the cosmic conditions that will allow it to reawaken. And those conditions appear to be emerging now, carried on the same astronomical cycles that once allowed the suppression to take place. The question is whether enough people will recognize this opportunity and choose to step away from chronological captivity before the window closes again. Because make no mistake, this is a window, not a permanent opening. The cosmic cycles that support chronological awakening operate on vast timescales, and the current alignment that favors the recovery of temporal awareness won't last indefinitely. Human consciousness stands at a crucial choice point. We can continue organizing our lives according to artificial time systems that suppress our full potential, or we can reclaim our chronological heritage and reconnect with the cosmic awareness that represents our true nature. The path is open, the knowledge is available, and the cosmic timing supports this transformation. The only question is whether you're ready to step through the doorway that leads from temporal captivity to chronological liberation. Because once you make that choice, Once you begin aligning your consciousness with natural time cycles rather than artificial constraints, there's no going back to the limited perspective of mechanical time. You'll have remembered what it means to be fully human, operating with a complete spectrum of awareness that becomes available when consciousness is freed from temporal programming. The hidden chronology isn't waiting in some distant archive. It's encoded within your own awareness, ready to reawaken the moment you choose to align with the natural temporal rhythms that surround you every day. The cosmic clock is ticking, marking not artificial deadlines but the vast cycles that govern consciousness itself. And right now, in this moment, those cycles are aligned to support your awakening to the chronological heritage that has always been your birthright. The only question is whether you're ready to claim it. So here we are, at the end of a journey that has taken us through caves in Romania, beneath the pyramids of Giza, into the secret archives of the Vatican, and ultimately back to the sky above your head right now. We've uncovered evidence of a chronological system so advanced, so threatening to established power, that it was systematically erased from human memory. But perhaps the most remarkable discovery isn't what was hidden from us, it's what was never really lost at all. The hidden chronology isn't locked away in some classified vault. It's written in every sunrise, encoded in every full moon, preserved in the biological rhythms that still pulse within your body, despite generations of temporal programming. The ancient calendar keepers didn't just leave us stone circles and astronomical alignments. They embedded their knowledge so deeply into the fabric of reality that no amount of suppression could completely erase it. Right now, as you sit here, you're connected to cosmic cycles that have been measuring time for millions of years. Your consciousness is part of a vast chronological symphony that plays out across unimaginable spans of time. The only thing standing between you and this awareness is the artificial time prison that modern civilization has built around your mind. The choice is yours. You can continue living according to schedules that serve someone else's agenda, organizing your life around artificial deadlines that disconnect you from natural rhythms. Or you can begin the journey back to chronological awareness, reclaiming your birthright as a conscious being existing within the magnificent temporal architecture of the universe itself. The cosmic timing has never been better. The same astronomical cycles that once allowed this knowledge to be suppressed are now working to restore it. But windows like this don't remain open forever. The question isn't whether you have time, it's whether you're ready to remember what time really is. If this journey has awakened something in you, if you feel that pull toward a deeper understanding of time and consciousness, then hit subscribe, because this is just the beginning. There are more mysteries waiting, more suppressed knowledge ready to be uncovered, more doorways to cosmic awareness that are starting to crack open. The ancient calendar keepers are calling to you across thousands of years, not through words, but through the eternal rhythms that surround you every moment of every day. All you have to do is remember how to listen.